Hey guys, Gongrongzong here, and I hope you're having a wonderful week so far. So there's been a lot of contention over Sylvanas as of late, and whether or not her recent actions are justifiable or just plain evil. If you've watched the amazing Dark Knight trilogy, I'm here to make a case for her based on its famous quote: Sylvanas is the Warchief that the Horde needs, but not the one it deserves. And at this point, I know a lot of people are going to be crying Sylvanas fanboy and stuff, and that it wouldn't make a difference for me to state that I'm not one, but just give me a chance and hear me out. I'm going to show you why her controversial methods are what the Horde needs right now, why her aggressive and antagonistic stance towards the Alliance is also what's best for the Horde at the moment, and why there currently also exists no other feasible replacement for Warchief. But most importantly, I'm going to try to showcase her in a way that doesn't just reflect her character to be some plain overly simplistic evil thing produced by bad Blizzard writing. Number 1. The Airlight Race War. First, let's build upon Anduin's quote. Only one of us wanted this war. We know pretty much by now that Sylvanas had a big hand to play in Teldrassil's burning, and that in fact, she had initially wanted to target Stormwind first. So we know she wanted to start some sort of conflict, and at the very least, was the clear aggressor in this. How, you may ask, could starting a war ever help the Horde's cause in any way? The Horde is all about survival, and the best way to survive is to not make enemies, but instead make friends with everyone. Following the recent events of the Legion's defeat, in which a high point was reached in Alliance-Horde cooperation, it would only make perfect sense to bring their diplomatic relationship to a new level. This is even more self-evident with Anduin now in charge, the most pacifist and understanding Alliance leader in WoW's history. However, what I'd like to showcase here is that this war that Anduin speaks of didn't necessarily start off with the introduction of Azeroth or during the battle for Azeroth, but actually started with the introduction of the Airlight races. Yes, Azeroth didn't start the arms race, Airlight racers did. While to us they may be just some awesome cosmetic additions, to the Horde and Alliance factions, the Airlight races are actually huge bastions of power that can be utilized to great effectiveness against the other faction. Take for example the Nightborn. They were a tremendous addition to the Horde, not only in terms of their military prowess, but also their economic strength. Suramar city is massive, and while very much in recovery from the Legion's invasion, it can still provide the Horde with abundant resources. On the other hand, take the Lightforged Draenei. They too were a powerful addition to the Alliance forces, bringing forth military and magical powers on a scale only heard of in myth and legend to the denizens of Azeroth. This war is a war for power, make no mistake about it. It's a war whereby each faction is in a sort of racial arms race, vying for more and more powerful allies to join their side before they consider the other. And we have even seen such a dynamic in our own real world, that of the Cold War, whereby the US and the USSR vied for power over the various countries of the world, whether it be in terms of an alliance of states like NATO or an annexation of states like the Warsaw Pact. Neither country was actually formally at war with the other, and thankfully cooler heads prevailed and no weapons of mass destruction were launched by either party. However, this dynamic is different in Battle for Azeroth. In the Cold War, the scenario of mutually assured destruction kept both powers at bay. This basically meant that if one side were to launch their nukes, the other would launch them too, destroying both powers and the world many times over. In Battle for Azeroth, there is no mutually assured destruction, as only one faction now has overwhelming power, and that is the Horde. Sylvanas now possesses Azerite weapons that can obliterate armies and kingdoms on a scale that has never been seen before, very much like a nuclear bomb. So to us, the player, this supposed war may seem very simple, but to the leaders of each faction, it is actually a power struggle with very immediate and clear ramifications that began with the introduction of allied races. The Horde has always been showcased to be the somewhat weaker faction. There has been a constant revolving door on its Warchief. Not only that, the Horde has so far lost two of its capitals, Orgrimmar and Thunderbluff, to betrayal by its own kind. And in both scenarios, Alliance help was required in retaking the cities. The concept of the Alliance is also not new, stretching back hundreds of years, and so it's naturally much more well structured and formed than the coalition of races known as the Horde. To any outsider without deep intimate knowledge of each faction, the choice of which side to join is clear. No one wants to join a power that is constantly embroiled in civil war. The Alliance clearly puts forth a better front, and with Anduin now in charge, a much more approachable and welcoming environment. Now with this in mind, let's put all these factors together. The Horde now have an extremely powerful weapon. They have the upper hand. In comparison to the Alliance, the Horde also seems weaker to the other races of Azeroth. Sylvanas, as Warchief, has to make a decision. If she were to be passive about this, the Horde would slowly but surely lose this racial arms race. More and more Airlight races would defect to the Alliance, allowing them to be in the position of power to dictate events in the future. Very much like the Cold War, neither superpower could afford for too many countries to join up with the opposing power. While the Horde's main aim is survival, the current dynamic dictates that the loss of potential allied races would now encroach upon that goal. Sylvanas simply cannot afford for this to happen, so she does the only thing that makes sense to her. Offense now becomes the best defense. Let's not forget, Sylvanas is a general first and foremost. She has been for thousands of years and is much more a soldier in the field than she is a queen in the backlines. As a general, she has had to make various tactical decisions to protect her people, decisions that would inevitably result in the loss of lives. Now, let's take this a step further as she is undead, Forsaken. From what we know of the Forsaken, it is very difficult for them to feel certain emotions, such as sympathy, pity, or regret. While they can feel them, it is rare and often not very strong. So here we have a general with a very weak conscience. Let that just sink in for a moment. Sylvanas is a general absent of conscience, or at least with the ability to emotionally disregard it altogether. She is now placed in a situation where she has to survive at all costs, and in her hands is placed a great and powerful weapon. Strategically, it also makes a lot of sense to go on the offensive as a show of strength to any potential allies. It may result in the loss of many innocent lives, yes, but in war, and especially to someone like her, collateral damage and the loss of lives is just a part of the process. She is going to attack first. It makes tactical sense, and the odds are in her favor. And as we can see from the initial events in Battle for Azeroth, the Alliance has lost one capital, Darnassus, and failed to retake another, Lordaeron. The Horde have now come out on top. Sylvanas' strategy worked, and now they are in a position to put forth a very strong impression to their potential allies. This is why Sylvanas is not necessarily the Warchief the Horde deserves, but is the one it needs right now. The Horde may deserve a Warchief who is honorable, understanding, and fair, but as of now, the Horde simply cannot afford to lose the war of the allied races, and Sylvanas is capable of doing what is necessary to ensure that they come out on top. A peaceful leader may not necessarily show a strength of arms, leading to a situation whereby the Horde slowly but surely loses power to the Alliance. So with that being said, let's go one step further and delve into her actual methods and whether the Horde needs a Warchief that conducts war through such questionable means. Number 2. Sylvanas' methods are necessary. The one key example that we're going to look at would be, of course, the recent siege of Lordaeron, where she basically carpet bombed the whole place with blight, killing both the Alliance and wounded Horde soldiers indiscriminately. Was such an action necessary? As painful and tragic a decision that it is, I'm here to argue that it was. For one, we know that it was a decision of last resort. Everything had been deployed against the Alliance forces, conventional troops, and even Azerite weapons. The Blight could easily have been used at the very beginning, but no such action was taken. Drawing on this, it's clear that to Sylvanas, Lordaeron cannot be taken by the Alliance, whatever the cost. Now, you could say that this was out of personal reasons like spite, but I don't believe that she's that simple of a character. Let's give her the benefit of the doubt and actually explore whether there are legitimate militaristic reasons for doing so. Lordaeron's location is extremely important. For one, it shares close borders with Gilnean lands. Any party that has any plans to retake Gilneas would have to first go through Lordaeron. Secondly, it is also very close to Tol Barad, yet another significant island base that has been fought over in several wars. Thirdly, it lies very close to Stromgarde in Arathi, the upcoming warfront whose immense strategic importance I mentioned in a previous video. Combining all these factors, the Horde simply cannot allow the Alliance to retake Lordaeron. It will result in a snowball effect of the Alliance being able to easily recapture all of these locations, completely dominating the Eastern Kingdoms. This would result in Silvermoon City being in a very precarious position and even potentially falling. In order to ensure the Horde's survival, and perhaps Silvermoon City itself, she had to make a choice. Sacrifice the wounded to ensure the survival of thousands of others, or allow the Alliance to retake Lordaeron and dictate all events in the Eastern Kingdoms in the future. The choice to her was clear. War is ugly and tragic and disgusting, and always will be. Without mincing words, all the so-called good guys in every war have committed atrocities on levels that should be considered as war crimes. Could she have done so in another way? Perhaps. But in the heat of the moment, with their backs against the wall and with little time left, she made a decision that we can easily sit in our armchairs and critique from hindsight. How many of us can truly say that when cornered and doomed to die, with an option available to save many others but doom a few, that we won't make the same decision? Sylvanas is the Warchief that the Horde needs because she is willing to make the difficult decisions to ensure their survival, even if that might mean sacrificing a few. Now don't get me wrong, Saurfang's way of honor and combat is definitely closer to the ideal, but as Sylvanas clearly mentioned, often you have to choose between honor or death. What if you were one of the Horde soldiers on the ground that day, knowing you had the option to cordon off your enemy and escape, and yet were being forced by your leader to charge in against overwhelming odds and die due to his personal beliefs in honor? How would you react? To Sylvanas, that honor is not worth salvaging, and she would rather save her soldiers instead. Lastly, Sylvanas is the leader the Horde needs right now simply because there are no other potential replacements. To start off, let's go through the current racial leaders that may be able to step up as Warchief. The only three plausible candidates are Bane, Saurfang, or Lothremar. Let's start off with the least likely of the three, Lothremar Theron. Lothremar, once a fast rider and Sylvanas' second in command, spent most of his life as a soldier and defender of the Sunwell. It was only following Arthas' rampage and Prince Kael'thas' betrayal that he rose to the position of Regent Lord of Quel'Thalas. As the leader of the Blood Elves, he has become proficient in the world of politics and is definitely no lightweight when it comes to negotiations. However, he will always be a soldier first and foremost and never desired the life of politics. He finds politics exhausting and constantly reminisces about his life as a fast rider. Political meanderings, diplomatic councils, and lengthy negotiations will always be a key part of every Warchief's life, so he already receives a strike for that one. In a similar vein to Sylvanas, Lothremar also places the safety of his own people, the Blood Elves, above all others, and is willing to go through any lengths to keep them safe. In an all-encompassing Horde, he certainly won't be the ideal leader that it deserves. Next, let's go to Bane. I think we'll all be in agreement if I were to say that Bane would make an amazing leader for the Horde, and that he very closely fits the mold of a Warchief that the Horde deserves. However, during such a climate, is Bane really the best choice for now? Bane would undoubtedly pursue peace with Anduin following the Legion's defeat. They have a positive relationship with one another, with Anduin placing much personal faith in Bane when he gave him the legendary Bronzebeard hammer, Fearbreaker. However, Let's not forget that Anduin is still very young and inexperienced, and most certainly does not hold complete control over the entirety of the Kingdom of Stormwind, much less the Alliance. Hawkish leaders such as Greymane still very much influence the Alliance's direction, and an attack on the Horde could occur at any time. Similarly, Bane is someone who is extremely forgiving, giving someone like Garrosh chance after chance after chance, even after slaying his own father, being an absolute tyrant, and making unreasonable demands of the Tauren people. I'm in no way saying that Bane is a pushover, but in such a competitive climate of Airlight races and Azeroth, it might not bode well for the Horde to take such a passive stance towards the aggressive elements of the Alliance. Bane might be the Warchief that the Horde deserves in a stable climate, but is unfortunately not the one it needs right now. Lastly, let's go to Saurfang. By many standards, Saurfang fits the mold of what a real Warchief should be. Honorable till the end, old and wise, and a war hero of many battles. He would undoubtedly be the most popular choice among the Horde populace. An ex-general and the current racial leader of the Orcs, taking the step up to being Warchief would be a natural transition for him. Without a doubt, he would treat all the races of the Horde fairly and would be far from a pushover in his negotiations with the Alliance. However, his archaic ways may be exactly what leads the Horde to its doom. He is very much a proponent of the old ways of the Horde, the culture of the Mag'har Orcish clans that we experienced on both Outland and Draenor. His style suits a much simpler way of life, when good and bad was black and white. But in today's dynamic, where the new Horde is much more complicated and where the lines are constantly blurred, Saurfang's clear-cut methods of operation may not be the best. The Alliance is no longer a foe that he can just defeat by smashing his axe against it, neither is it an organization that he can expect to act honorably in all its dealings. This war is not a Mag'har where rules will be adhered to. It's messy, it's complicated, and involves far more races and cultures than just the Orcs. Saurfang may be the leader that the Horde deserves, but in the current dynamic, he may not be the one it needs right now. And those are the 3 points of why Sylvanas is not the Warchief that the Horde deserves, but the one it needs. We need her because we are currently embroiled in a zero-sum racial arms race. We need her because she is willing to do whatever it takes to ensure the Horde's survival. And we need her because there is no one else better suited for the job. And that's a wrap. If you enjoyed the video, remember to hit that subscribe button, as I'll always be doing videos on such content as they get released, especially controversial topics like this one. Controversial topics are always the best to delve into. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in Azeroth.